What's up, YouTube? Uh, Today, you can see the date. I mean, obviously, once this video is posted, which is going to be in a few minutes from recording this, you're going to see the date officially saying when it was released. If you see it right then. Otherwise, I'm not too sure my video shows the dates that the videos were released. I don't think it says the exact dates, if I'm not mistaken. To my memory, if my memory serves, it does not do that. So, but you can, if you're a fan, you'll be probably very familiar with when I've been posting these videos, that when I started and where I'm at now. You'll be familiar with it. You will probably be familiar with what days, what months, weeks. I mean, personally, it could be as easy as just checking on my YouTube page and just seeing where the video section says, oh, what dates was it produced. I mean, you might be able to look at the bar graphs and data it shows, and that might tell you the months, but that's it. I don't think if you click on a video it necessarily tells you. If I remember correctly, it does not tell you the month. But I could be wrong. I don't know. Look, the point is, enough of that rambling. If you recall, very recently, within the past few hours, I posted a video on this channel. The theory being about how the USA must obviously be weaker than every other continent on the planet. However, one thing that I noticed is that I did fail to make it work and convince the whole world for one reason only, that being that there's one thing I should have put in the video that would have made all the difference that I forgot to put in there. One thing I forgot to mention, it's the fact that there has to be evidence that I bring in that there's no way for there to be a mistranslation error to be the reason why my theory could be false. I mean, so I made a phone call not too long ago, within the past few hours today, to a church within my state of residence, and I called, and there was a receptionist who I spoke with who told me that what is probably the most off-putting thing about the theory about the USA being weaker is the fact that the Bible is prone to mistranslations, and so, well, it's very possible that the reason why the Bible is trying to say that the USA is the strongest is actually just due to a mistranslation. However, not only have I given truckloads of evidence in old videos about why that can't be the case, but there's also just some evidence that I should have given before being given the realization that that's probably why none of you have been convinced of my theory about the USA. Probably just due to the fact that there is the possibility of mistranslations, but sadly, it took this person today on the phone call giving this explanation and excuse that made me realize that that's probably, it triggered me into realizing it's probably just the excuse of mistranslations. Like I said, I've already covered why it's not mistranslations on my channel for many, many videos ago compared to this one a long time ago. But look, it doesn't change the fact of the matter here is that you can go to those videos to do that, to see that I already gave evidence. Now, of course, whether you're familiar with my channel or not, you may be skeptical about if you can really trust that I made those videos, or if I did, that I really gave sufficient evidence. So this is why it's probably hard for people to ever get started on considering my videos to be credible. I don't have any credentials that I've proven to show that I have on my channel. Mentioned my credentials being a high school diploma a long time ago, and that I have attended some college courses. However, you can go to college and take courses that have no way to show that you're intelligible in terms of the things that I'm saying or my theories. The same way that you can do such things and never have an interest in the things I'm saying. And if you don't, you're not really likely to be credible on the matter. You can go to high school and graduate. And I graduated from high school, but you can graduate without having an interest in the things that I'm saying. Or, like I said, a diploma only means so much. And it's not only that, but it's also the freaking fact that I could go on YouTube like anybody can and just post images that are photoshopped saying, oh, I have this credential. But, that doesn't usually happen. Usually it's just people who use some sort of software that actually has to verify that a person has credentials through some online database. But, like I said, what's the point? It's redundant when, again, even though I have a high school diploma, or even if I had a college degree, no matter what, it doesn't change the fact that no matter what the information that I could learn in school, I could learn it at home if I so choose to, which is what I did. I was my own teacher in a sense. I was a researcher, self-taught. I've already went over that for years, for how that happened in my life. I went over who I was taught by, what source of information I've used. I went over that. I almost have to do this every video because no one coming into my channel can ever not be schizophrenic enough to just take any leap of faith, rational leap of faith in what I'm putting forth. So anyway, long story short, everything I've said, take into consideration. Still, one thing is for sure, there's no way to seemingly convince anybody to trust what I'm saying, unless what I say is just really sounds like it makes a lot of sense. Sometimes I've convinced people like that and I didn't have to tell them anything about. They might have asked about my credentials, but I just insisted that they hear out what I have to say. They're convinced of it, and that's it. So yeah, but look, long story short, like I said, credentials don't mean anything when you can learn all the stuff you can learn in school or college at home. If they tell you otherwise, they're brainwashing you to try to get you to go to college and give them more money. Most people are extremely retarded, so they actually are gullible enough to believe the lie that you have to go to college and school to learn, when all the information that's taught in school and college is free and accessible in textbooks and on the internet. So the only difference between school and the only difference between high school and college and homeschooling is that one is at a building with a lot of people around your age and not around your age, and the other, and it has a lot of people, and the other does not have a lot of people in it unless you're in an apartment or some boarding house or something similar to that. So obviously, stands to reason that when it comes to school, school is nothing other than a building, like a house that you already live in. It just has more people in it learning together. You can learn all that same stuff, but by yourself. You don't have to learn at others' pacing or with others or by others' orders, unless you're a really stupid person who just wants to only go by others' orders, which is what most people are. So, long story short, what I would say, and is my recommendation, is that in life, what you should do is you should take that into consideration when people have arguments for any source of information. They can be somebody who was an independent researcher, a private researcher who just didn't want to learn alongside others. They just wanted to learn by themselves. And that's it. So this is why I think that even asking for credentials, when I insist that it's irrelevant for the reasons I said, is a redundant waste of time. It's a coping mechanism that everyday people use because they just basically hate to have to admit that I could be right about their intelligence. But anyway, because they're very sensitive. But anyway, much more than I am. So anyway, back to what I was saying, which is that, well, long story short, there's no real way to ever prove that what I was saying is true. If there is the mere possibility of mistranslations, and again, people won't go to the proofs I gave unless they were already on the video just for whatever reason, but which is more of a random chance thing. But one more thing I want to say, though, is that to really solidify my theory, consider that not everything in the Bible is considered possibly a mistranslation. Like, there's some things in the Bible that everyday people will have to. Every Christian admits that, for example, in the Bible, it's not a mistranslation where it says God created everything, or where it says that God is a character in the Bible. These are not mistranslations according to any Christian. So it's obvious that it's possible for there to be things in the Bible that are not possible to be a mistranslation by any standard of Christian thought. Well, if that's the case, then can this be applied to my theory about the USA being weaker in the Bible? Again, the Bible tries to say the USA is the strongest nation because it tries to say that the Antichrist was born. Wherever the Antichrist would be born would be the most evil place. Things are a product of their environment. You're more evil if you're born somewhere that's more evil. Evil places give rise and birth to evil things. Good places is the opposite. So it's obviously true that the United States must be weaker because, first of all, of the reasons I said in the last video that you can watch. The United States is weaker because, well, the United States is physically smaller. The United States is physically smaller because, well, that's how the laws of physics work, and that's how chemistry works. Now, let me explain something here, which is that, well, the United States is more likely to be weaker between all the nations than the other nations being the weaker one, because, simply put, weaker ones, simply because not only does the Bible say God designed the laws of physics, but Christians agree that even if the Bible didn't say that God designed the laws of physics, that it must be true that God did design the laws of physics. The laws of physics, one way or another, are something that would make it so that smaller objects are weaker than bigger objects. This is considered to be a scientifically proven fact. It's accepted by the Christian community as a scientific fact and as a biblical fact. So, it must be true that one way or another, the science community can back up Christians, and Christians can back up the science community that God designed the laws of physics. In Genesis, he designed the laws of physics. He made the earth through the laws of physics. The earth is a product of the laws of physics. So, the earth is not a contradiction to the laws of physics. It's merely bound to the laws of physics. Meaning, the earth is just this thing, this conglomerate of the laws of physics floating in space that basically, one way or another, is having different nations that are just following the same rules of laws of physics. Well, problem is, if this is really the case, then it must also be true that the United States is weaker for the reasons I said in previous videos, but I'll go over them again. The United States is smaller than other nations. You can look at a map of the world to observe this simple fact. You can look at more than one map of the world. You can look at any map of the world for all of history, and they all show, most of them show that that's what it is. Most people in history agree that the map of the world that's most commonly used is most accurate, so it's obvious that it's most likely to be accurate. Since said maps were created by the same everyday people that come to such a consensus, they're less likely to actually decide to use any fakery, since they all genuinely want to work together on it, rather than use it as a tool of manipulation against each other. Well, long story short, if this is the case, then the United States is far more likely to be weaker because that means it has less wilderness. I've gone over going by evolution and other theories of physics, why, if things are physically smaller, they're weaker. I didn't just use the law of attraction as a theory to back up what I'm saying. For people who don't like evolution, try the law of attraction. For people who don't like the law of attraction, try evolution. For people who like both, try other ones. For people who like neither, try the other ones I mentioned. I gave all kinds of sources of information to back up why things being smaller means that they are more likely to be weaker. Things being bigger, they're more likely to be stronger. Okay? And it's a guarantee. It's not just likelihood, it's a guarantee. It's an increase in size, it's an increase in strength. Since everything that you're increasing the size of is strength itself, so adding the quantity is increasing the strength. Long story short, there is no way to actually how do I say this? Actually, prove my theory to you people without bringing in one simple fact, and that's that the Bible tries to say that God designed these physics. Well, if he designed the physics, and this isn't a mistranslation, then he must have designed the Earth to be small, the United States to be smaller, other continents to be bigger, and so they're at a massive physical advantage. This could not happen unless God intended for other nations to be at a bigger advantage. Okay, so Christians agree that he actually did. Then Christians must actually agree that God actually intended for other nations to be stronger because they're bigger. So then, why does the Bible say that the Antichrist will be born in other nations, not in the United States? Because the Antichrist is most likely to be born in the weakest place, or the worst place, the most evil place. Not the strongest place. Because strong environments produce strong characters. Weak environments produce weak characters. So, the United States being the weakest one, for the reasons I said, going by the physics that the God of the Bible said, well, this is how physics should work, and this is how these should work, because they're not going to be equal in size. So, it's pretty obvious that, and think about it, you can try to say that God didn't design these continents to be these different sizes, but it must have been the case. Now, I do want to say that another thing, which is that some people might say that, well, okay, God designed the earth and whatever, right? But think about it. When God designed the earth, it was just this place. Now, some Christians disagree about this, but the earth is just this place where there is, the Garden of Eden has to be on earth. It's pretty obvious. Now, some Christians try to say Garden of Eden came before earth, but this is obviously not the case, simply because in Genesis it has been flat out stated that the Garden of Eden was created. It doesn't say it, but in Genesis it is stated that the earth was being formed during the 7 days of creation. Well, no, not the 7 days, 6 days of creation. And so during 6 days the earth was created. Well, is Eden a part of that earth? I mean, it's pretty obvious that it is, because Eden is not on another planet. There's no reason to believe it's on another planet. Now, here's some reasons why it's safe to believe it's not on another planet. If it was really on another planet, then the conditions would not be survivable for humans. At least according to the Bible, other planets are less survivable for humanoid creatures such as ourselves. So this is why other planets are basically just way too. If we say this is all consistent with all these different interpretations and theories within the Bible and outside of the Bible are consistent with the Bible lore, then it has to be argued that Eden was definitely not another planet, just by the simple fact that, like I said, according to the Bible, it's too dangerous on other planets. The second reason is that, simply put, it flat out says that Adam and Eve were taken from the earth itself, from the dust of the earth. Now, some people try to say, when it uses the word earth, they try to nitpick at this. They try to say, well, when it uses the word earth, this could just be a mistranslation, or not a mistranslation, but there's different definitions of the same word, of the same kinds of concepts. Like, back in the day, they used the word earth for anything that was on the ground, just to describe it. Like in the older times, the authors could have said, they could have used a different word to describe the ground on a different planet instead of just calling it Earth. But maybe they just didn't care because they just wanted to get the idea across. So it could be metaphorical for that reason. So, which are kind of legitimate as explanations, but let's not forget that, again, the other thing is just the intention. The bigger thing is being the intentions of the Creator, that is God. Why would God want to put Adam and Eve on a planet that, according to Him, the conditions of which are less survivable? So He wouldn't do it just because He wouldn't want to put some people that He doesn't want them to die or sin. He doesn't want them to go on a planet that's less survivable. I mean, obviously God created other planets different to Earth when He created the universe during Genesis. But even so, this doesn't mean that He would believe Adam and Eve to be suitable to be put on such planets. So they were obviously talking about Earth being where Eden is. So why then does God decide to put Eden, of all places, on Earth? Other than the reason I said, well, there is one reason why this is stupid, which is because, ironically, the size of the planet, despite being great for life and humanoid life, let's not forget that this still means that God basically designed the continents to be the way they are, to be unequal in stature. And He did design things to be unequal in stature. Even Adam and Eve are just examples of this. They are unequal in stature. Did you notice that they are super unequal in stature? and physical size, and this already creates an imbalance of power. Yes, this is just another way to back up what I said earlier about USA compared to other nations. It's like an analogy to the same thing. I mean, it just points how the laws of physics that this God designed. He designed these laws of physics, and he's just like, well, you know what? I'm going to use them to create imbalances and cause these imbalances of power, which causes conflicts between different things. Because, well, if you have two different things that have different level of power, it's only upon that by which they would have a conflict between each other, because they are not completely the same. So this is why, of course, the God of the Bible is evil. Something that I've talked about for years, that has been said for probably trillions of years now. But one thing is for sure, and that is that, well, one way or another, the United States is much smaller than the other nations. This was of God's design, according to Genesis and multiple sources of information. And so, obviously, the God of the Bible is just obviously pulling your leg and yanking your chain to make you think that he's not just trying to set you up for deception. Okay, so think outside the box and don't be such a gullible little interpreter of religion and philosophy. All right. Okay, so anyway, I got something else to say, which is that basically it's pretty obvious that what I'm getting at here is that the Bible has all these suspicious things and these suspicious ideas that don't add up with sources of information outside of the Bible that the Bible refers to back up its own points. And this can only mean one thing. It's either that the Bible is fallacious, or it's not fallacious, but it's just mistranslations or misinterpretations of the definitions of words. And again, this is where you have to basically put different parts of the Bible at war with other parts of the Bible. You have to actually test out what's more reliable. What can you go by? Can you go by more likely? The parts that are not able to be mistranslations because it's just what the lore has to be, or the parts that could be a mistranslation and are not necessarily what the lore has to be. So that's the only way to really verify what's true and false in the Bible in terms of what it's saying, and what's a contradiction in the Bible and what isn't. So, because without doing that, you are basically just speculating whether you know it or not. But I will say that one thing is for sure, and that is that the Bible is basically definitely not telling the truth when it tries to say that the United States is the strongest. Because look, at the end of the day, I don't know where Eden took place in, but it would definitely be the strongest country. And Eden, first of all, Eden happens to take place in a country Eden happens to be this really great place, but it probably wouldn't take place in the United States if it's like the best place on Earth at the time of, which means it would definitely be in the strongest country, which is definitely not the United States, because the United States is much smaller than the other nations. And I already went over again why the God of the Bible ordained it to be that by the laws of physics that he considers to be holy, that smaller things are weaker and of a lower quality and more sinful because they're weaker. So the United States will not have the best country on Earth. I mean, the United States would not be the best continent on Earth. It would not have the best garden on Earth at any point. And so and keep in mind that this is before the fall. I mean, it's not before the fall of Eden. I was still talking about before the fall of Eden because technically Eden became more fallen than it already was once they ate from the tree. Now, I pointed out reasons why it was already sinful prior to that, because not only was the devil, who is sin itself, inside of the garden, and also other creatures. I mean, it's a contradiction, first of all, how the Bible tries to say it's both. It's not really sinful, but then also tries to say it is sinful. Because it tries to say that the devil is sinful, Adam and Eve are sinful, and tries to say that everything falls short of the glory of God. But, like, if everything falls short of the glory of God, like, first of all, I just want to say that we all know that, not all of us, but a lot of people know, a lot of Christians know this, that there is the famous verse that many Christians refer to, many denominations, that all fall short of the glory of God. And that, meaning everybody is a sinner. Now, this can't be a mistranslation because, again, for the reasons I've said for years, but also, it can't be a mistranslation because, long story short, if God isn't the only one who doesn't sin according to the Bible, then it makes no sense because it would be a contradiction of his omnipotence and omniscience. And if there was a being that's omnipotent and omniscient, it could do anything to make itself not have to sin. Even if its creation would have to sin. But as far as like that, then you already know that everything in the Garden of Eden, before the fall of it and after the fall of it, was sinful. Yet it's kind of ironic how the Bible tries to also give the idea that that Adam and Eve couldn't have sinned until they knew what sin was. I mean, it doesn't make sense because it's trying to give this narrative that, oh, well, you know, like if you try to, like, grab from a tree and eat it, and it'll make you understand what sin and good is. Like, first of all, this doesn't make sense because you can't possibly... This is complete baloney, and this is a hoax in the Bible, written in the Bible, because obviously to even think about what anything is, to even understand what things are, you have to understand the values of things. If you understand values, then you understand the negative values and the positive values. So you have to understand what good and bad are to even think about anything. So also, it's pretty obvious from the sorts of things that Adam and Eve did before eating from the tree that they already knew what good and evil was anyway, even by the Bible's logic. But also because they not only were they doing good and evil before eating from the tree, but they just show, like I said, they just show that they know it with how they think and talk or communicate before eating from the tree. Also, how everything else basically did things that was in the garden before them eating from the tree shows that all those other things also knew what good and evil were, and were doing good and evil prior to eating from the tree. So, also another thing, the fact that the serpent was in the garden just shows that sin was in the garden. Now, don't get me wrong, just because one bad thing is in a garden doesn't mean everything becomes infected with sin. It's like if you have a virus in a body, just because it infects one part doesn't mean it's going to make every part sick or infected. Sin being like a virus in this analogy, of course. So, but the fact that, you know, an environment can even have anything impure inside of it, the fact that there can be an impurity inside of a thing just shows that it has to have something wrong in the first place to even be vulnerable to having something, to contain something wrong inside of it. So this is another proof that it's pretty obvious that by the design itself of Eden, God created evil. Because he created Eden as this place that just by design even has a vulnerability to evil. I don't know about you, but doesn't the Bible say that the reason why God is perfectly good is because he has no vulnerability to evil? Well, if something was perfectly good, it would have no vulnerability to evil, then why is it that said that Eden is perfectly good before the fall of Eden, if it has a vulnerability to evil before the fall of Eden? And same thing with all the creatures in it as well. And all the angels before the fall in heaven having the same issue. Which I've said for years, of course. All of this I've said for years. Given years worth of proof anyway. What else? There's another thing that I wanted to say. Which is that when it comes to but even just going back to the first theory I came up with earlier. Which is when it comes to what do you call it? Is it really true that the United States is going to be according to the laws of physics talked up in the Bible? Is it really going to be the case that they are weaker than other nations? Yes, again, at the end of the day, you can look at all the evidence I gave in old videos, you can look at the evidence I gave in the last video, and the video that I referenced in it that was not too long before it. You can look at other sources of information that have said the same thing for probably centuries and trillions of years. Now, as for is the United States the weaker one? Well, long story short, it's the weaker one because God would have to make it weaker by physics. And again, even if evolution isn't true, because it has less wilderness, it must be weaker. If it has more wilderness, it's stronger. This isn't just because of how gravity works when something is bigger and weighs more. This is for another reason that I've already gone over, which is, again, the simple fact that to even, determine the strength of your nation, you have to go and cultivate the resources in your wilderness. Every land starts off as pure wilderness. What you must do is you must go off into the wilderness that you have, no matter what it is, cultivate the resources, and build your society. If your wilderness is smaller than your neighbor country, or neighbor nations, so be it. You're just going to be a weaker nation because you're going to have less resources. So, and not only does the Bible say this a number of different ways, but other sources of information say this a number of different ways. I've said this for years. The Bible explicitly has passages in it saying that other nations, believe it or not, are subject to the same logic and laws of physics as the United States is. I wonder why that might be. Let's think about this a little bit further. Let's talk about the fact that the United States is said to be the place where not only Eden was to follow that same laws of physics and was a product of the same thing I said, which is, starting off as wilderness and it evolving over time through cultivation of resources. We can use Eden as an example, whether it was in the United States or not. You can use it as an example, but we can also use other things, which is simply what is it called? The numerous passages in the Bible that talk about how, well, basically every passage in the Bible and parable just happens to be about the same bickering bullshit that I've talked about for years anyway, which is, oh, well, which land and which people have more power because they have more resources. Just basically pointing to what I'm saying being true anyway, which is that true strength and power is just determined by the quantity of resources anyway. According to these same parables that, like I said, the entire Bible is just basically nothing but the same exact lesson taught over and over with different nations and people. That's how it works. And them bickering over it. So, long story short, it is canon. It is not mistranslation or misinterpretation of the definitions of words, where it tries to say that in the Bible, one thing is for sure, it must be the case that the United States is weaker. Even though later in Revelations, it tries to say it's the strongest because, oh, the Antichrist is in the weakest nation. He's in a foreign country. And think about it. There's no way that there would be a nation that would become, like the ranks aren't going to go out of place with nations. You get what I'm saying? Because they all have everything that all of each other have. They all have the same stuff. It's just some have more of it than the other. So it's just this race. It's just this losing game for whatever has less of the stuff, and they'll never catch up. So this is why you already know that whatever nation started off weakest would have always been, according to the Bible. So if the Antichrist is born in the weakest nation, whatever that is, it says it's foreign countries, and that's because they were always the weakest, according to the Bible. Which again is just doesn't make sense. Going by the physics taught in the Bible, going by the physics taught in real life outside of the Bible, because let's not forget that the Bible is not as great a book as the authors claim it to be. They say it's the ultimate authority on what's true science, true physics, true math, true politics, true history. No, it is not. I've given hundreds of examples, hundreds of bits of evidence over the years. So have people for trillions of years, okay? This is just become utterly redundant. And I will not have any more of this, okay? So I put my foot down in this video. I have given more than just what I was even originally intending to put in this video, obviously, to make it even harder to deny that what I said is true. So, long story short, there's no way that there is no way that the Bible will ever have any way to explain what I said or account for the fact that what I said is a debunk. There is no way that anybody in the history of ever will have anything in the Bible or out of it to work around what I said, because Christians already admit that the physics I talked of in this video, that it is indeed the physics talked of in the Bible, not a mistranslation. No denomination says it is, and says that, yes, and they all these denominations, yes, they all agree, that everybody agrees that the Bible says the Antichrist will be born in the worst nation. And wherever that is the worst nation, because the laws of physics says it has to be the worst by chemistry and physics, and that's why it's the worst. So, it's over with. There's no way to beat this argument, okay? The only thing you can do is, in delusion, hallucinate that you are defeating my argument here. And that's it. Just like every other argument I've put forth on my channel. Almost every other argument. I mean, I've put out falsehood arguments very rarely on my channel, which the more familiar you are with my channel, the more likely you are to know that is the case. So, yeah, that's pretty much all there is to say in this video. You can use the backup evidences I gave, that, again, about like how God must have created evil when, he created the laws of physics, which in and of itself, is it really evil? I mean, no, not necessarily, but what came of the laws of physics is evil. Well, the Bible says that anything that produces evil is evil. The laws of physics produced evil for the reasons I said. Because again, I'll repeat this one last time. God created the laws of physics. The laws of physics produce the conditions of where physical things and objects have to be physically weaker because they are smaller than other ones. I mean, again, there's no way that that is not an example of God creating evil, because again, if you say it isn't, then then you have to be saying that if God that if God did not do that with physics, that Eden would be worse, or it wouldn't make any difference, when that is just not true. The fact that Eden had its problems because the organisms in it were of different sizes already tells you that if they were all the same size and all the same material, then why would they try to fight each other? If everything had all the same, if everything was equal in every single way, then nothing is going to fight each other. And if you think otherwise, you are an extremely delusional schizophrenic person who does not understand basic math, because you have to understand what things cause what things, and some things can't cause certain things. You can't have equality cause inequality the way that inequality causes inequality. Yes, I understand that things can cause their opposite to happen, but it's a very different way from a thing causing itself to happen versus an opposite causing the thing to happen. Two very different ways of causing the thing to happen. And if you don't understand how that works, then you're going to be like the average person who is a schizophrenic loser who does not understand why what I said is proof. Okay? Long story short, you can't have an existence of pure equality where everything is in perfect harmony in terms of beliefs, understanding, intelligence, size, material. With it all being the same, there is not a single thing that can change. Because if everything is the same, nothing can change. And if nothing can change, then nothing can change in a negative way. You can only say that the sin or the wrong can happen from negative change. Well, there's no negative change if there's no way for there to be any change at all. There's no way for there to be any change at all if everything is the same in size, material. And if they're the same in size and material, then they're going to be the same in intelligence. If they're the same in intelligence, they're going to have just as much an ability to understand what good and evil is as each other. And it is not in understanding what good and evil are that makes one evil. It's rather the opposite, because understanding things is not an evil thing to do, it's a good thing to do. The Bible says that God would not be evil to understand what things are. So how is it any different with us? It's more likely that it's not any different because God wouldn't want it to be any different for us, so that we can become closer to his greatness. And that be one way for us too. Especially according to the character of the God of the Bible, this would be true. But sadly, I kind of have to just end this video here because I've said more than I can possibly fit into one video without it being unreasonable. Putting anything more in this video would probably be redundant and make it far more unattractive to my schizophrenic fellow people who watch my videos. So, yeah, more than they can bear. So, thanks for watching. Goodbye.